So I bought this. I want to talk about this real quick because I talked
A
about it
pretty fun game
on the
too.
last
Pretty
game.
funny game, I
It's
should say.
called Rights or Racist, and I found it on Amazon. So it's basically like some mega hat police, blah
Mhm.
blah, PC police, and there's some interesting
Which is
cards in
hilarious because
here.
I was just like, damn, that's like,
Yeah,
I was like, there's no Democrat or anything because I was like, just right away, I thought this was just like a regular cop, and then the MAGA hat. I was like, damn. I was like, even the people in the game know, like, yeah, these two things are racist.
yeah. So there was some interesting cards in here, and one of the previous
You
episodes we
kept them.
talked about
You
was
kept them together.
yeah, I kept them together. One was with we argued back and forth about the Native Americans and the hatred towards like them and the Redskins.
Oh, the
And one of
Redskins.
the
Yeah,
cards
yeah,
actually
yeah.
said like 99.5% of Native Americans aren't offended by the Redskins.
Right.
But it was like funny, and we went back and forth, and I got this Caucasians T-shirt. It was actually, in, I think,
Well,
the web
Did you ever?
episode
It
I
was,
sent you.
did you ever watch ESPN? You know who Bomani Jones is?
No.
What? I'm disappointed in you now.
Bomani Jones had a T-shirt wore on ESPN that said Caucasians, and it was
Yeah.
like the
But it was
the Cleveland
this was
Indians,
Like a
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
and it had a white guy on it with like a cash symbol, like what is this tether?
Was
and
that
like
it?
yeah.
I thought it was just a white face. Like, you ever seen Fallout? The game? The
Yeah,
game
I seen Fallout.
And it's like the fucking like 1950 like smiling white guy or something like that.
No,
it
I
was
thought it was just that.
no, it was like a in the face in the
Buddy in
face
it?
of Chief Wahoo,
Really?
white guy, and he had like it was like the feather,
Was
and
money?
it was either money on the tie or money in the feather,
No, it had to be.
or it might have been both.
Uh-huh.
I got the T-shirt upstairs. I can show it to you before you leave, but it's in the episode too. Of one, of, I think the last one we did.
I think that like white people were more upset than Native Americans when it came to the naming of a franchise.
No, there was some Native Americans.
I mean,
who were
I know that
upset.
there were some that are upset, but I mean,
It
as opposed to
wasn't enough.
numbers, like
I think
who
they kind
was
of just got
more
used to
upset
it.
or
Oh,
who
yeah.
was more enraged. There was more people who
You want to play that song?
Just something.
like.
Oh,
I feel as though those people were the people who wanted to change the franchise name of the Redskins, like because it had a racist connotation, were not that necessarily of the community that it was racist towards. Is what I'm saying. Like the majority of the people who got outraged because of it were not Native American people.
Well, so a big thing that was like I read some of the stories, and I don't want to. We beat this like a dead horse already, but um,
yeah.
it was like one of the running backs wore like a cutoff, and it was the Redskins instead of the other one, the Caucasians. It was like a Redskins, but it said Caucasians. They're like
Yeah.
their mascot with a white guy in it, and it was like a cutoff. And this guy was wearing it, walked to a street corner, and some lady was like, "You can't wear that," white lady, and he's like, "Why not?"
Right.
Like, because she's wearing the Redskins one. But and him and I were kind of going back and forth how it was like the only thing that I saw with it was like how black people got themselves in the middle of it because it was between whites and Native Americans.
I didn't.
You know what I
see
mean? Yeah, you kind of like, man, but stories, and I agreed with you. But at the same point, I'm like, how many of them really care? Like, how
Oh,
many?
yeah,
And then that was my kind of thing. Is like, it was something that like I didn't see too many Native Americans caring about, and then black people sort of jumped on the bandwagon of like shoving down racism to prove a point.
I just went to the Native American Museum
What's that sound?
in Washington D.C.
It's my phone. Go ahead.
Oh,
And this is the first time that I've gone as an adult, like able to comprehend what I was reading on the walls, and
rather than like a class trip.
exactly
Right,
understand the full what actually happened to the Native Americans. And when I say that Native American propaganda in the United States is the least of the worries for Native Americans and what the atrocities that was passed on, like what happened to them, that's like at the end of the, you know what I mean, like.
Oh, that's definitely at the end of the line. of
Right,
shit- of
like
shit.
there's areas in California where like it's Palm Springs now, like one of the most affluent places for Caucasian people to live. You know what I mean? They excluded all of the Native Americans, but that was all of their land.
Did you-
Right.
That's what I was talking to you about. I don't mean I'm sorry, but this goes into what you're talking about. Like, remember I was telling you they had the land grab.
Yeah, you talking about the
And it was
land
just
grab
basically
and
like it was like
all white
hey,
people.
all you white people, go grab some land. Now you had to like fiercely defend your land, but it was like, hey, it was like basically, like, and he's like, wait, hold on,
Right.
this is us. You're like, silly red man, we're gonna kill
But
you.
if you-
Get out of here.
If you look at like the way that it was portrayed in our history, like how you learn in school, like what happened to the Native Americans, you don't actually learn the details. You don't
Right.
learn that
Thanksgiving.
they were literally going into like these these communities, and then they were described to us as just like huts and like non-developed people, like ignorant people, but that's not true. These were communities living as equals, and the white man literally was like, "Oh, I want your land. Your land is better than the land that you allotted to us in the first place."
Right.
And they were like, "Oh no, yours is better. You're getting more tourists. You have more crops in your area, so we're gonna take it from you." In the case of Palm Springs, they literally did that, and then they went to court. So this wasn't indigenous group of people who couldn't speak the native tongue or anything like that.
Or
They
were just stupid. They like
right.
savages. Yeah.
They fought them in court, and then the court decision was that you
Shut
have
up, red
no
man.
right, you have no claim to this land because you don't have papers.
So
It's like,
what
you
was
didn't
this?
have papers either.
What
How you
was
gonna create
what was this on so I can look it
So
up?
this is the Palm Springs. If you just look up the history of Palm Springs,
In
and
California,
yeah,
right?
if
Yeah.
you look up the history and how they got their name, so there was the freshwater springs is what they wanted access to, because when they moved over there, the Caucasians had wagons and they took their stuff, but they didn't settle in the right area. But the Native Americans were already living there. They had hundreds of years to figure out what was the right area.
We were just talking about this. Like, remember I was telling you that like murder played a significant part in, like, you know, the decimation of the, you know, Indians and things of that nature. But really, it was, like I said, chemical. And kudos to, you know, not maybe you in general, but, you know, your ancestors. Chemical warfare, man. When y'all brought those white people diseases over,
Chickenpox.
those
I was
goddamn
thinking about
the
this the other
goddamn
day.
Indians were like, man, what the fuck is this?
I thought about this
What
the
is
other day.
happening?
Right.
Dead.
I was wondering. I was like, do you think? I think they did, but do you think they maliciously gave away the chickenpox blankets? Like,
No.
It was
or do you think they
syphilis
just
and-
gave
yeah.
it to them and didn't
I
know?
think, well,
You know what I mean? Because like, how would they know?
No, they purposefully, like, there's cases where, like, it was literally like you were gonna, like, we know that this person is sick and we know that they have a disease and we're going to wrap this up.
like
and we're
this person's
gift
gonna
it.
die,
Exactly.
and we're gonna send that.
It would
Up.
be like in a battlefield, right? I'd raid the dead corpses with whatever disease and whatever bear and shit is on it.
And
I'm
then
like,
give it to people.
I'm like, hey, truce. Here's some.
Here's some whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, here's some.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. And if I give that to you on the premise that I'm giving you a gift or like a truce,
Right.
and it just ends up killing all of your people, of course that's malicious. Like, even if you don't do it on purpose, it's still malicious. The results were malicious.
Absolutely.
Like, you killed a bunch of people from something that they were never even exposed to, something
That's
that
the
you
biggest thing.
refused to give them your knowledge and how to treat and how to prevent it from happening to the rest
Chemical
of their
warfare,
people.
baby.
And
Well, I just think about how their lackluster knowledge of disease back then. You know
I
what
mean,
I
there
mean?
was-
that's an excuse, though. We
I'm
knew
not-
fully what this was.
And that's
Well,
what I'm saying.
I would
Like,
say they
like-
knew, but see, they knew their disease. Like the
I'm
people
not
coming here knew their disease.
Diseases,
basically.
right.
Like,
I'm not defending it. I'm just
Hold
saying
on.
I wonder, like, if you
I felt
split
the
it
same
down,
way.
like, you know what I mean? It's hard to break down per case, but do you think
Right.
like every single case was like?
No. There was a lot of
You
murder
know what I
and
mean?
rape
Like,
involved.
I'm
A lot of
thinking, like,
murder, pillage,
They
and-
pillage villages for fun. Like, this was
Oh.
a thing that happened for fun.
God, there was
Believe
something
me.
I just learned about, and this, I mean, it's not like I said, it's not against you or anything or whatever, but it's one of those situations where I learned about, like, we learned about Columbus again.
Oh,
like,
God.
And a lot of the time,
Yeah.
I was told in a different variation, I was told he never made it to America. Like,
Never
he
made
it
it.
to the,
No,
the
yeah, he made it
Caribbeans.
Caribbeans.
He made
and
it to the
called them-
Americas.
Yeah,
not
he made it
Yeah,
America.
North America.
That's right.
Correct.
And then he basically, but in the Caribbeans, he was raping, pillaging, murdering. Still, I mean, just he was
How do you
having
think the
a
black
hell
people
of a
got
time.
to the islands? Like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what happened.
But
They
I
took
mean, but
slaves
he
to
was
them.
having a hell of a time doing the worst stuff. And actually, his story was so non-significant or insignificant in history until an author, I think I want to say a British author or something like that, heard about him and actually hyped up his story and made it more was it palatable for
Yeah.
everybody. So that, and he became like this hero rather than like
Like
he was
a-
kind of known as like a dummy.
It's
like,
called
Well, yeah,
whitewashing.
he was
even
just-
though
he
the-
was
the
an
king and
idiot,
queen,
mad
they were
and
like,
deaf,
all right, we'll
and
give you
yeah.
something. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, he wasn't this genius.
He was a failed explorer. That's
exactly.
what he was.
Yeah. And so they were kind of like, all right, here you can have it was a Santa Maria.
There's
and
a,
all
uh,
They're like,
That
yeah,
was the
those are-
need for him to lie and say
Yeah.
that these places were not inhabited.
Exactly.
That is why he felt the need to lie and say that there's no indigenous population here. I discovered this, therefore I'm gonna go on my trip there, I have to stop in Africa for materials. I'm going to take people there so that on my journeys back, I can leave you here to develop the land so that when I bring the royals back, I can have something that looks relatively similar to what we're accustomed to back home and in Spain, I believe, right? Or Portugal, whichever. I can't remember which
Well,
one.
that's the other thing. I will give you that. A lot
It
of
was
people,
Spain.
a lot of people blame blame white people, like Christopher Columbus. They're like, yeah, but he was actually from Spain, so he would kind of be like Latin or something.
No,
Well,
that's
it's
a
kinda
European
one of those-
Spanish person.
Yeah, I was like,
It's kind of one
Well,
of
yeah.
those things where it's like white Jesus.
oh,
You know what I mean? If it's like a lot of historians like to believe like,
Jesus
oh,
Christ.
no,
What
no, no,
about-
not no, no.
Oh.
A lot of historians like to be like white credit, like, oh, Christopher Columbus. Well, yeah, he was white.
Yeah.
Jesus, of course,
He was
Jesus
white.
was white.
Right.
Well, you remember what's it? Laura.
Get out of here.
Laura, I think it's not Laura. Is it Laura Ingram? Like she left Fox and went and got her own show on like
Yeah.
NBC or some shit like that.
CBS.
Or so-
right?
no, I think it was like CNN or MSNBC. One of those.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's working or if she still has it. But she was the one that I remember one time they were talking about Christmas, and she was like getting fed up about people going back and forth. And like, she was like, "All right, let's wrap this up. Hey kids, Jesus is white, Santa Claus is white. That's just what it is. We're gonna go ahead and go to commercial break." And it was like, "Wait, what? You just made the guy from the Middle East white?" And then Santa Claus is like, "All right, I mean, I'll give you that."
But I mean,
but
this
it's
is-
also not a Christian, thing.
To
but
me,
okay.
that's arguing like I'm not a religious person, like in any stretch of the.
But it was just
imagination.
funny that she said
So,
it that way. It was
yeah.
kind of like, come on, guys, we already know.
To me, it's
Jesus
like-
is white. Santa Claus is white. It is what it is. Tooth Fairy is white. Come on, let's go home.
Right, but it's like we are arguing about the race of, to me, fictitious like creations. So I mean, like if someone wrote a book and that the person was white in the book that they wrote, then that they're theoretically that person is white. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Or,
right.
like-
Because they're
like-
playing a character.
Right,
In
you
their
know what I'm
mind.
saying? Like it's not necessarily like a real person like Pocahontas, for instance, like that was portrayed. It was literally a kidnapped teenager,
Also,
that
no,
was
she was a
portrayed-
kid. She wasn't even a teenager.
kidnapped child taken, and then
But
this
John
story was
Smith?
created as, you know what I mean, literally whitewashing history and propaganda.
God, that
like,
Well,
story is pretty fucked
Women
up,
back
too.
in those days were considered women by the age of 13 because of life expectancy.
No, but I'm saying no.
right.
But like, was
We'd
it,
all, you
was
and
it-
I'd be close to the end of our lives
Right.
at 34.
but
oh,
nevertheless,
but
she was
John-
taken.
Like the guy, no, what he's talking about is the guy. Was it John Smith, right? Or some shit
John
like that.
Smith, yeah.
Yeah, he actually they never got him and Pocahontas never got married. There was never a relationship. He
no,
literally
nothing.
like it was like he married I think another
He
Indian
took her
woman.
back to.
He,
he
yeah.
just kidnapped her
He,
and
yeah,
took
he
her back
kidnapped
to
her and
England.
took her back, and she was kind of like a show thing. And then he like I think brought her back over to
Yup.
Americas, and it was like finally I think by that time she was old enough, and it was never what especially the cartoon.
No.
God damn, that cartoon
It was never, and that's in the museum. They have a whole section dedicated to like the whitewashing
really.
of Pocahontas
Now that
and the
normally
story.
doesn't happen. They don't really show. Well, sometimes, but even in some black music I've been in the past, they didn't even like the whitewashing that we talk about. And sorry, Steve.
I don't know. Hey,
But I mean, it's just the like
it is what it is,
of-
man.
I
of
mean, it's
history.
history. Like,
But
Yeah, it's history.
But like I told you,
I didn't write the
before.
book.
No, I said, but I told you before. History
Hey.
goes to the winner.
Hi-
History goes to the victor.
His story.
Not her story.